never looked at any of her patterns and been like, oh my god, I have to make this. Hi everyone, my name is Jamie and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, I make videos about knitting and yarn, and that's pretty much it. So if that's appealing to you, if you're into fiber arts, definitely recommend checking out my other videos and subscribing if you enjoy that kind of content. I'm also very active on Instagram, so you can check that out at Jamie_creates, and I'm also on TikTok. I just wanted to let you guys know I recently released my new pattern, the Josephine jumper. I'll put a photo somewhere on the screen. It's just come out yesterday when I'm filming this, and I'm super excited because I haven't released a pattern in a while. So if you're after a light, fluffy, super fun and pretty quick knit, all things considered, with some lace detailing. If you've never done lace before, it's very easy and very simple, so I'd highly recommend checking that out, and all the links will be in the description. Also, if you're wondering, I'm wearing my pretzel pullover, which is currently in testing. I made this using Malabrigo Rasta in the shade Cucumber. Today's video will be a knit and chat, which I haven't done in a while, but I am excited to do. Hopefully I don't look down too much. I am going to be knitting the second sleeve of my Ghost Whisperer top, which I started, I don't know when I started it, last week probably, and it's knit up so fast. I have not been working on much else since I started it, so yeah, I hopefully will finish it soon actually, because I'm already on the second sleeve, and this is how much I've done. I've done like a few rows of the second sleeve, so we'll see how much I get done in this video, but I'm not the best when it comes to knitting and not looking. That makes sense. I'm not the best at knitting without looking, so I will do my best, but I might be looking down a little bit. I thought it would be a fun idea that someone suggested to do a unpopular knitting opinions video. So I asked if people could submit their unpopular knitting opinions, and I said, please actually make it unpopular. And I think everyone pulled through for the most part. I would say these are contra opinions. Some I agree with, some I don't. I'm basically just going to react to those. I also have a few of my own unpopular opinions. Just want to say also that, like, if you agree or disagree with any of these unpopular opinions, you can, comment, but just everyone please be respectful. And also if you, disagree with something I'm saying, everyone, has a right to their opinion. When it comes to things that aren't really that important, that only really affect the individual, I don't think it's really anyone's business to judge and be hateful towards anyone for, knitting in a different style, for example, like English or continental. I think that is just like so not important and not worth, judging someone or making someone feel bad about. Obviously not everyone has a right to their own opinion when it comes to things that are more serious and are discriminatory, but that's like a whole nother thing. But in terms of these more trivial things, I think it's just fun to discuss our opinions and share our opinions and, say whether or not we agree or disagree. And that's really all there is to it. It doesn't have to be so deep. It's really not that deep. Okay, so I'm gonna start with some like very knitting related opinions that you've submitted. I'm just reading them on my computer behind the camera, so just bear with me. So someone has said purling isn't that bad. And I would actually have to agree with this. Not that I think purling is the best thing ever. I don't enjoy it more than I enjoy knitting. But I do think it gets a little bit too much hate. I think it's really like, obviously it depends on your style, and I think definitely it might be more annoying in some styles of knitting, but honestly, like, my purling is like very different to how most people who's knit continental would purl. So even within styles, I feel like, it's different for everyone. And I don't know, I just feel like purling is like, it's annoying if you have to purl an entire piece, but that's only if you're going to purl in the round, which I feel like it doesn't happen very often. I did purl in the round for these sleeves, but it was chunky, so it didn't go on forever. And I managed, so I think if I was to have to purl in the round to avoid seaming, I'd probably still do it, which is why I did these sleeves in the round. So that's my opinion. But I also do understand why people don't like it. It's just not as fun. Someone said, I really like seaming. I said what I said. Look, I can't say I really like seaming. I definitely am not seaming's biggest hater. I'm pretty good at it. I'm not gonna lie. I'm pretty good at seaming. My seams look pretty neat, but if I could choose not to seam over seaming, I'm gonna choose not to. Mostly that's why I choose to knit in the round. Not so much because of the pearls, but more because of the seams. Similar note, but hard disagree. Someone said, I actually like weaving in the ends. Yeah, look, I cannot get around this one. I'm so sorry. I do whatever I can to minimize the amount of ends I have to weave in. Most of the time I try to use magic knot when I'm changing colors. Some yarns don't really allow for that, but when I can do it, I do. And I still seem to always end up with more ends than I would like. So, I don't know. I just find that when you finish a project, you want it to be done, and like, it's kind of like blocking, but worse because it requires like doing another thing that is just like not knitting, and you just want to wear your piece, but you can't. Whereas like with blocking, like you kind of can wear your piece. You know, some people will say that's a sin, but with weaving in ends, like if they're on the inside, you could probably get away with it. Someone did say, most of the time I think weaving in the ends is a waste of time and I leave them floating free. I think that is some serious, I don't give a F energy, but good on you. I personally wouldn't do that. I do sometimes leave the ends on the inside loose if I really want to wear something and I don't have time to weave them in, but like I'll weave them in as soon as I get the chance, because I don't know, it's uncomfortable to have little ends like floating around, and also I'd get like stressed about them getting just, I don't know, someone tugging on it or something by mistake. I don't want to think about it, but yeah, I understand why people either can't bother weaving in ends, because I definitely can't bother, but I still do it, or why you'd want to just leave them, but I don't understand enjoying it, but I'm jealous. I really wish I enjoyed it because it's something that we all just have to do. Someone said, I hate knit two together, it always feels so clumsy. Don't agree with that personally. I don't find it clumsy to do. If it was knitting like 3 together maybe, but knit 2 together, I don't find an issue with that, but I think it also depends on what yarn you're using. Sometimes I'm like, really got to jam it in there to get the 2 stitches, but I think it's a really good decrease method personally, and it's really easy and like very beginner friendly, you know. I have to like switch these around because I'm alternating skeins like a good girl who uses hand-tied yarn, and I'm just trying not to get them tangled. Okay, someone has said the sweater curse is a load of BS. Now look, I'm not gonna be the authoritative figure on whether or not a curse is real. I personally am too scared to find out. I'm in a very happy relationship and he knows that there's a curse. I've made it very clear to him, and he's never asked me to make him anything anyway. And I just like one time like someone asked, oh, are you gonna make him something? And I was like, oh, like there's this curse. And he was like, what? And I was like, sorry, like there's a curse. And he was like, explain. And I was like, oh, like I just don't want you to break up with me. I don't actually think you're going to break up with me, but like, yeah. And I like had to show the Wikipedia page and everything, because it's got a Wikipedia page, so I think it must be real. I definitely know people who don't believe in it. Lena. But you know what? Like, I think all power to you if you don't believe in it. You don't want to be held back by something that I guess is made up, because obviously I don't think curses are real, but I think the sentiment is there of like the amount of hard work that you put into making something, especially like something as big as a, you know, sweater or jumper, that like you don't want that person to like, you know, break your heart afterwards or before you've even finished it. I'm trying to think. I think it would hurt more if it happened before. If I was to be broken up with before I've actually finished it. Yeah. It's kind of like, and this is not the same, but like in one of my previous relationships, we were like binge watching not binge, we were just watching the Marvel movies like throughout our whole relationship, and we were up to Avengers, Infinity War, I think. And oh my god, there's a mosquito in my room. Anyway, we were up to Avengers Infinity War, and we were like halfway through, and we like often didn't watch the movies in like one session. Anyway, we were halfway through it, and then he broke up with me before we finished it. And then I still haven't finished it. Probably never will. It's a similar feeling of like you're in the middle of something and then they just break up with you abruptly before you finish it. And if it's something that you're actually like putting your time in to make for them, I'm not risking it. And he understands that, and he is very okay with it. Maybe if I knit in something small, if he asked me to, I would, but a sweater, not happening. Someone said mohair sucks. Some mohairs I find to be too itchy, especially like around the neck. My neck is quite sensitive, I've noticed, and that's a bit annoying because I really like crew necks. It's pretty much my go-to neckline, and so if it's, you know, an irritating yarn around the neck, then that's no good. But I do find the thinner the mohair, the less irritating it is. And I haven't experienced it being too itchy with pretty much most mohair yarns that I've used. Only a few, but yeah, I definitely prefer Suri to mohair. That's what I'm learning this year. All right, let's get to some juicier ones, because I definitely have some juicier ones. Maybe I'll say one on my own before I get into the rest. Okay, so don't hate me for this opinion, because it's coming from a place of personal taste. And I'm probably coming from a place of not being incredibly informed, because I actually haven't knit any of these patterns myself. But I think PetiteKnit is like kind of overrated. Like I said, I haven't knit the patterns myself. I haven't bought any of her patterns, so I don't know in terms of how they're written, the quality of the patterns. I know she's like the biggest designer out there, so I'm sure they're good, because I don't think she would be able to have such a good reputation in terms of so many people buying her patterns if they weren't good, like weren't well written. I think it's great that they're available in lots of languages. However, like, I don't think they're ugly per se, but they're just not my style. And I don't know, maybe I could adapt them to be more my style. But like, I have like, and I've tried, because I like to be in on things. I like to be in on the trends. I'm not like the kind of person who's going to be like, oh, this is so mainstream, I don't like it. Like, my favorite artist is Taylor Swift. Like, my favorite musical is Hamilton. Like, I'm not that kind of person that's going to be like, I'm too cool for this like mainstream thing. But like, I've never looked at any of her patterns and been like, oh my god, I have to make this. Oh my god, I really want to make this. I've always looked at it and been like, I just don't think I'd ever wear it. I don't know, like, it looks like stuff my mum would wear. And that's not to say that my mum has like bad fashion sense. I just like don't feel like it's, I don't know, I just feel like it's definitely catered to a very broad audience, like age wise, and I know the pieces are quite classic, but like when you compare it to like my favorite things knitwear, I like see so many of her patterns and I'm like, yes, I want to make that, I want to make that, I want to make that. Like, I would and do wear those kind of pieces, even though they are more kind of staple pieces and less like crazy, I don't know, crazy like bold patterns that, like, you know, not everyone could pull off. I don't know, I can't explain it, but I just like have never been so inclined to knit one of her patterns that I've actually gone out and done it. I just completely stopped knitting for the last few minutes. I am thinking I will try one out, because I feel like I can't have this opinion and be so strong on it if I haven't actually knit one of her patterns myself. But I don't think I would make anything for me unless she comes out with something that I do want to make for myself. I may make one of her patterns like as a present for my mom, potentially, because I do think she would actually like those designs. So I may change my mind, and also may end up knitting something of hers for myself if I do find something I like. But at this stage, I think like it surprises me that like everyone's obsessed with her so much, because I just see it and I'm just like, yeah, not really interested. But I do like her content, I do follow her, and I do, you know, appreciate that she's very talented, and I'm not a hater. I wish her designs were a bit more size inclusive. I know I've heard that she's working on updating them, but I still feel like they're not 100% there, and also taken long enough. But yeah, I think she is, you know, obviously done a lot for the community and is very inspiring in the fact that she's built this incredible company out of doing what I do and would love to be able to do on that scale, but that's never gonna happen. Okay, so that's my little controversial opinion. I feel like no one else shares this with me, but anyway. Comment if you agree, because I feel very alone in this opinion. Okay, so another juicy one. Someone said, and I'm not gonna go too into this, because at the end of the day it is everyone's choice and everyone's values are different, but someone said knitting influencers, I guess, that still use We Are Knitters aren't really slow fashion supporters. I think it's obviously a big claim, because I don't even think it's necessarily just knitfluencers. I think it's just anyone, to be honest. I don't think we can just box people in who are like promoting their yarn per se as like the only people that contribute to, or that like would be at fault of this. I think anyone who would buy their yarn would fall into the same category. Yeah, like, look, if you're unfamiliar with what happened with We Are Knitters earlier in the year, they did a collaboration with Zara, which was incredibly controversial because they had very much preached that they are leaders in slow fashion. They are all about ethically made, you know, clothing, trying to combat fast fashion with their brand, encouraging people to make things themselves. And even though obviously the collaboration was a DIY kit, I don't even remember what it was, Crochet, something like that, they collaborated with like the world's like leading fast fashion brand, and said it was their dream collab, and then like doubled down on it when they were called out. And so, like many other people, I don't support them. I don't follow them on Instagram. I don't use their yarn anymore. Well, I should rephrase that. I have been using up my stash, but I haven't purchased from them or collaborated with them or done anything to promote them since it happened, which was in like March this year, and I have been perfectly fine. My life has been okay without their yarn. It was okay before and it's okay after, so yeah. And like a lot of people have boycotted them, but like this person says, a lot of people have not. I'm not, like, some of these people are my friends. I'm not here to like, you know, judge anyone, because at the end of the day, not everyone is doing knitting for that reason. Like, not everyone is, I'm a knitter, therefore I am like this slow fashion, like anti-fast fashion, like warrior. Like, that's not necessarily everyone's kind of motivation, and that's fine. I think the real issue with what We Are Knitters did was because that they claimed that was their brand ethics and then went totally against that. So I think if people are using their yarn and then still claim to be like really like, you know, pro slow fashion, anti fast fashion and anti those kind of brands, then like I think, yeah, like supporting We Are Knitters is a little bit hypocritical. But I think that if that's not your thing and you've never claimed that that's your thing and you are knitting for other reasons and you want to just promote, you know, just knitting because it's relaxing and because it's fun to make your own things, but that doesn't have to be like the, you know, it doesn't have to be a part of this like bigger movement, then I think if you like their yarn and you want to buy their yarn and whatnot and work with them and collaborate them, if you're a knitfluencer, then that's fine. I just think it's all about consistency, and that's where the controversy was really stemmed from in the first place, because there was a very clear inconsistency with their brand ethics, their like self-proclaimed brand ethics, and the collaboration, and then they like basically refused to apologize for it. So yeah, I no longer work with them, because, you know, I try to, you know, minimize my fast fashion consumption as much as possible, and I try to promote slow fashion as the way forward and sustainability and all those things. But yeah, if you aren't, you know, so passionate about that and you just enjoy knitting and you want to buy from weird knitters, I'm not going to tell you not to. That's my rant on that. Let's go something a little bit less controversial, a little bit less intense. Someone said, this is violent though. Someone said, I often skip adding my stitch markers for basic down-up jumpers / shirts. If this is in the round, and you mean you don't put a stitch marker to mark the beginning of the round, I am like deeply offended by that and genuinely concerned because the amount of like effort it would have to take to, like, if I didn't have a marker here, like I'd have to like be checking where I joined the yarn just to know where the round actually started, and like who knows if I'd actually get it right. One of my friends, when I found out she didn't own stitch markers, I was just like, wait, what? Like, what? Like, what? She's like, I don't own them. I was like, what? And she just doesn't use them at all. And I was like, I just am not about that kind of chaos. So I'm so sorry, but I disagree that is okay. And I would never do that. But if it works for you, I am concerned, but very happy for you because you do you, you know, but also unsure how that's more convenient than using a little stitch marker just so that you know where the round starts. But hey, no judgment. No judgment. Oh, this one was kind of related to the weird knitters thing. Someone said sustainable knitting isn't really a part of the main community. I wouldn't say it's not a part of the main community. I think there are a lot of aspects of the knitting community that definitely are not in line with sustainability. I could go on and on about that. I'm not going to, just for like time purposes, but like I think it is a big part, and I think the controversy with We Are Knitters and the fact that there was so much outrage on this collab like showed that it is very important to a large portion of the community. But yeah, I would agree it's not necessarily the main part of the knitting community because not everyone necessarily shares those values. And also sustainability is a very broad term, and there's so much that goes into that conversation, and it's not so black and white. And I don't think I don't think that you can necessarily I have a tangle. You can necessarily classify one thing as sustainable and then as completely sustainable and something else as completely unsustainable. I think there's more nuance to that people don't necessarily acknowledge. Okay, it's okay, we've untwisted it. Quite a few people brought up, like, I'll just read them out because they all kind of more or less say the same thing. So someone said roving yarn is impractical. Someone else said projects with bulky roving yarn are impractical and don't have longevity because of pilling, fad, etc. Someone else said chunky knits are extremely uncomfy. Super chunky yarn pills way too much to even bother with. I think it's up to personal preference. I think if you don't like pilling, then that's a bit unrealistic with pretty much any yarn. Like most yarn pills, it's just to different extents, and because it's chunky you notice it more. And so I think that I personally actually really enjoy pulling the pills out. I know maybe not everyone does, but like that's incredibly satisfying for me, and I very much enjoy doing it when I'm wearing my knits and when I'm not wearing them. Also depends on the yarn. I think to just put all chunky roving yarn into like one box is like not the most accurate, because I definitely used quite a few and find that they pill to different extents. I would say the one that pills the least, or the least noticeable and doesn't pill as quickly, would be this Malabrigo raster yarn. So if anyone was looking for one that pills less, and it's also way softer than anything else I've used, so highly recommend it. I really enjoy it. I don't find it to be difficult to knit with. I don't find it to be impractical to knit with. Obviously it's not good as a portable project, but for knitting at home, I think it's great for that like instant gratification. Sometimes I just cannot be bothered with the small like hand movements. Like I just need something that's gonna be quick and work up quickly, and they're very warm. I find them to be obviously my warmest pieces, and they're fun to design with. But I totally get the impracticalities about it. one, they're not cheap. Two, they take up a lot of space in your wardrobe. I literally have to have like a whole separate section of my wardrobe for chunky knits. What else? Yeah, like they do pill and they do require a bit more upkeep, but I really do think that we have like a bit of a false expectation, because on Instagram all that we see are like freshly casted off pieces that like haven't been worn, and so we don't see pilling at all. But that's just a part of, yeah, that's just how yarn works. Like that's just a part of life. Like I don't know, it's just like a reality there's not much you can do about it. So yeah, but I totally understand that it's definitely not for everyone, and it could just be a fad. I mean, I can't predict the future. I do think chunky knits aren't really going anywhere, but I might be wrong. I hope I'm not. I plan on continuing to wear mine. We'll leave it at that. Someone said I don't get offended when I am knitting and people ask me what I'm crocheting. Yeah, I also don't get offended. I think it's funny that that's the case, that you'd be knitting and someone would ask what you're crocheting, because I think that's only because crochet has had a bit of a boom, like with the pandemic. Like people are more aware of just crafts in general, and like that there are a bunch of different fiber arts and not just knitting, because I think knitting would definitely be the most commonly known one. I used to be a crocheter before I was a knitter, and all my friends like you know, didn't really know too much about what I was doing. They would just be like, oh, what are you knitting? And I would always be like, it's crochet. And now it's funny because I like trained them all to say, what are you crocheting? And now I'm like primarily a knitter. Like I don't crochet anymore. And so they'll be like, oh, like, especially like ones I haven't seen in a while, they'll be like, oh, how's your crocheting going? And I'm like, good. I actually knit now, but it's totally fine. Like, I feel bad being like, oh no, now you have to retrain yourself to say knitting. Like, I know what they mean. So yeah, I don't think it's something that you should be offended by. I just think it's good that people are saying it both ways now, because obviously it means they have been educated as to the fact that there is more than just knitting, but maybe people still can't quite tell the difference. And that's fine, I guess. There are bigger problems to worry about, but obviously it would be nice if everyone could just tell the difference, but that's not something that I could expect. Someone said, I prefer magic circle to knit in the round. I definitely think I would prefer to like have a small cord like I do for this sleeve, but if you don't have interchangeable needles, like that's the perfect solution. I didn't have interchangeable needles for months before I got these. I only got these years. I only got these a few months ago because I was traveling, and it was just easier to pack my needles if they were interchangeable. But I exclusively use magic loop for things like sleeves and sleeve cuffs and neck trims and whatnot. So yeah, I think it's super practical in that sense. But do I prefer it to having an appropriately length cord? No, I don't prefer it. It's kind of annoying. I've got another juicy one, and I don't know how much I want to say on this because I don't want anything to come across in the wrong way. But okay, so someone said, I'll touch on it briefly. Someone said, test is working only for the pattern of their own volition, in brackets, is not a bad thing / big deal. I think there's a lot to this conversation that I can't just talk about in this like short little segment, and I could do a whole video on it. But I think that, yeah, I agree. I think that if people volunteer to do something in life, that's not a bad thing or a big deal. I have personally volunteered so much of my time in the last few years, not this year, but in the few years before that, I volunteered so much of my time towards this organization that didn't pay me a cent, and that was my choice. That's what the word volunteer is. What did I get out of it? The joy of doing it, the friends that I made, you know, the difference that I was making, but I wasn't ever expecting any payment. So I think if you volunteer to do something and you know there's not payment, then that's not a problem. I understand why people might find issue with it because the pattern designer profits from it, but I think like we're talking about a really small industry in the grand scheme of things. Like, oh god, this is all twisted. Obviously, you know, there's been a commercial boom per se in, you know, knitting and fiber arts, but us independent sorry, I'm just like untangling this as I talk. Us independent designers are still not necessarily making full-time wages that you know, and then some to be able to pay test knitters, and that's just the reality. I think if people were, they would. I don't think it comes from a place of being unappreciative or exploitative. I think people volunteer out of the goodness of their heart because firstly they also do get something. They get, you know, a piece that they wanted to knit. If they didn't want to knit it, they wouldn't volunteer to do it. You learn so much. I know everything that I do about designing from test knitting. So it's very invaluable, and there's a very strong community that forms from it. I met so many people through test knitting. I don't know, like, I just think I understand that there's been a lot of discourse about it in the past couple of months, and I think that is good, and I think it's important that we think critically about the things that we do and the way that we conduct ourselves in, you know, this community and pattern writing and pattern testing space. I think it's important that we think critically about it and we question things and discuss things and make sure that, you know, we're not just doing something because it's always been done that way if it's wrong. But I do think that it has been like overblown in terms of how serious of an issue it is. And I also find it difficult when people make assumptions about others' financial situations and like assume that you have this many followers, therefore you must be making this much from your pattern sales, which is just, those two things kind of have a correlation, but at the same time they don't. Like, someone with 1,000 followers could be selling as many patterns as someone with 20,000 followers, for example. And also, you know, everyone's financial situations in general is different. Like, there are so many things that come into play. But yeah, don't want to get too much into that. But hopefully what I've said makes sense. I have more thoughts about like testing and like the way that we look at it, but maybe I'll save that for another video. So there's two in terms of like budget / acrylic yarn. Someone said I prefer acrylic sometimes over wool, and someone said budget yarns are worth knitting with. It's okay to not buy high-end yarn. There are nice cheap options, and I totally agree with both of these. They're totally valid points, and I used to knit only with acrylic and cotton before pretty much this year, like towards the end of last year I think is when I started to switch it up, and now I like pretty much exclusively knit with animal fibers, but that's because I'm in a position to be able to do so now, and I wasn't before, and that's also all about your priorities and how you spend your money. Like, for me, that's something that I can prioritize, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to do that for a number of reasons, but not everyone can, and that's really like fair enough. And like, we should just be happy that like the fact that people are knitting should be enough. Obviously there's more, this comes back to the sustainable thing, there's more sustainable ways of doing everything, but at the end of the day I just think, yeah, acrylic gets too much of a bad rap. I think there are a lot of pretty decent quality in terms of like how soft it is and how easy it is to knit with. Options, I've used a lot of them. I think that it has a lot of benefits, especially like being able to work with more colors and stuff, because you like have access to buy more colors when it's cheaper, for example. Yeah, I feel like a lot of those things have been said. People have voiced the same opinion that I have, but I definitely think that they're worth knitting with. Anything is worth knitting with if it means that someone can knit, if that makes sense. And then someone else said we spend too much money on yarn. I think that's also very subjective. What is too much money? Who's we? like everyone's buying different amounts of yarn, and yarn costs different amounts depending on where you're getting it from. I don't know. I think this kind of comes into like one of my own, I don't know if it's an unpopular opinion, but it might be to some people, that I think the word overpriced and yarn should not really like go in the same sentence, especially if it's to do with hand-dyed yarn. I've seen that word thrown around so much, and I just think it has like a really negative connotation. Like, that's overpriced. Like, that product is not worth what it costs. And I just think it's like, especially if you're buying from an independent yarn dyer, like, how can you say that that's not worth the price, because you have no idea like what's gone into it, and it's most likely just one person. Obviously there are indie dyers that are not really so indie anymore and have, you know, people working for them, and that's incredible that they've been able to get to that point, but they all started out as indie dyers by themselves, dyeing in their kitchen most likely. And so much thought and effort goes into hand-dyed yarn that like it's actually underpriced. But obviously, you know, there's a certain threshold to which, you know, people can charge for things before it becomes completely inaccessible. But yeah, I think it's the same thing with saying that a handmade item is overpriced. Like, in comparison to what? It's something that you could get from a big company. Like, yes, but those aren't the same thing. One's handmade and one's not. So yeah, I just don't like when people say, oh, that like yarn is so overpriced. Like, you can say that yarn is expensive. Overpriced and expensive are two different things. Like, you can, like, there are a lot of expensive yarns, and hand-dyed yarn is expensive. But is it overpriced? Not necessarily. If it's not accessible, because like not necessarily everyone can afford it, that doesn't make it overpriced. That just makes it, that's just the unfortunate reality of capitalism. That's like a whole other broader societal issue. But I think in terms of like value, like devaluing the hard work of makers by saying something is overpriced is just like very not in the spirit of like what we do. But I totally understand that a lot of yarn is expensive, trust me. And I wish obviously that our hobby, you know, and this craft that we love so much wasn't so expensive to, you know, continue to do. But like I said, there obviously are cheaper options. Someone said knitting with smaller needles is way nicer than with big ones. For me, it depends on the day. Sometimes I do not want to knit with big needles, and sometimes I do not want to knit with small needles. Usually too much of one thing is my issue, so I try to really like change it up quite often. Like even in one day, like I'll switch from project to project so that I'm not just doing the same thing. I found when I was in Europe and I was like mostly knitting with small needles that like I got so sick of it. Oh my god, I got so sick of it. So yeah, that's personally how I feel, but I definitely understand that like people have preferences and some people just do not enjoy one or the other. So that's my thoughts on that. Yeah, okay. Wow. Can't believe I got through all those. I did not think I'd get through everything, but I did. So yay me. This is where we're at the sleeve. I don't know how much I'd done before. I probably should have put like a little progress marker, but I think I was a few rows in, so we did pretty well. Have been knitting for like probably 45 minutes, but nevertheless, still did pretty well. I hope my opinions weren't too offensive or controversial. Yeah, like I said before, let's just have respectful discourse. Thanks to everyone who submitted those opinions. You gave me content, so I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. I'm pretty close to 1,000 subscribers, so trying to get there. Like I said, my links to all my patterns will be in the description on my social media. I have quite a lot of pattern releases coming very soon, so yeah, keep an eye out for those. All right, I think that's everything. Hope you have a great day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!